#1 on the Billboard Hot 100 at just 17 years old. One of the youngest artists to ever top the charts, a feat matched only by Stevie Wonder and Michael Jackson at that age. He produced Edgar Winter's Frankenstein, which hit #1. In May 1973, he produced all of the Winter Brothers' gold and platinum records. His signature solo hit Rock and Roll, Hoochie Coo, became a rock radio staple for 5 decades. He won a Grammy Award for producing Weird Al Yankovic's albums. He played guitar for Steely Dan, Kiss, Barbra Streisand, Alice Cooper, and Todd Rundgren. Rick Derringer wasn't just successful, he was unstoppable. Then it all faded. He was charged in 2017 with carrying a loaded gun on a Delta Airlines flight, a humiliating arrest that made national headlines. The teenage guitar prodigy who conquered radio couldn't fill mid-sized venues anymore. His solo albums after 1975 barely registered on the charts. Spring Fever peaked at number 141, just 141. He underwent a triple bypass surgery 2 months before his death on Memorial Day 2025. While reaching for his favorite pillow, his heart gave out. Critics called his later work unrecognizable. Fans called it a betrayal of the blues rock genius who'd once been untouchable. The man who hit #1 replacing Barry McGuire's Eve of Destruction when he was still in high school. The guitarist who Eddie Van Halen credited as an influence. Watching Derringer's band performed regularly before Van Halen even had a record deal. The producer who supplied the guitar solo on Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse of the Heart. By the 1990s, Derringer became a born-again Christian and released Christian music albums with his family, abandoning the hard rock sound that made him famous. The session work dried up. The phone stopped ringing. He toured Asia as Ricky Wu, recording Chinese pop songs, desperately seeking relevance in markets where his name still meant something. He went from teenage phenomenon to industry journeyman to forgotten relic, from stadiums to churches to silence. This is the story of how early success became a curse. How a #1 hit at 17 set expectations impossible to maintain. How the thing that made him famous, being young, being first, being lightning in a bottle, became the thing that destroyed his legacy. But to understand the collapse, we have to go back to 1947, to Salina, Ohio, where none of this seemed remotely possible. Salina, Ohio, 1947, rock and roll wasn't respectable here yet. It was the sound coming from across state lines, from Memphis, from Chicago, from places parents warned their kids about. This was farm country, a small town in western Ohio where manufacturing plants mattered more than music. The streets were quiet, the expectations modest, and stardom wasn't something anyone from Salina dreamed about. That's where Rick Derringer was born. Born Richard Dean Derringer on August 5, 1947. He grew up in nearby Fort Recovery after his family moved when he was 8 years old. He received his first guitar for his 9th birthday. He later told Guitar Player magazine, "I was a natural." He wasn't polished. He wasn't trained. He was hungry. Rick and his brother Randy began playing music together, inspired by the British invasion of the Beatles and other UK bands in the early 1960s. Rick played guitar and sang lead vocals. Randy played drums. They weren't trying to be the next big thing. They just wanted to play. After Rick finished 8th grade, the family moved to Union City, Indiana, where Derringer formed a band he called the McCoys. He renamed the band the Rick Z Combo, then Rick and the Raiders, before reverting to the original name, the McCoys. Rick Derringer on guitar and vocals, Randy Derringer on drums, Randy Hobbs on bass, Ronnie Brandon on keyboard. Their sound was raw garage rock, energetic and unrefined. They played covers of British invasion hits, local dances, anywhere that would have them. They were teenagers playing for other teenagers, and they were good enough to get noticed. In the summer of 1965, before Derringer turned 18, the McCoys were hired to back a New York-based band called the Strangeloves in concert. The Strangeloves were record producers from New York City looking for a band to record a song called My Girl Sloopy, written by Wes Farrell and Burt Burns. They chose the McCoys. Derringer persuaded the producers to change the title to Hang On Sloopy. It was a small change. It made all the difference. But even in the beginning, the seeds of destruction were already there. Rick was 17. He had no manager, no lawyer, no one protecting his interests. The contracts he signed gave most of the publishing rights and royalties to the label and producers. He was being packaged, shaped, and sold as a product, not as an artist. He was a teenage star in an adult industry. He just didn't know it yet. By 1965, the McCoys were ready. Rick Derringer, the teenage guitar prodigy. Randy Derringer, solid on drums. Randy Hobbs, driving bass lines. Ronnie Brandon, adding texture on keyboards. This was the lineup that would change everything. Their sound was unlike anything on the radio. Hang On Sloopy, with its rocked-up arrangement, was raw energy wrapped in a 3-minute package. Rick's guitar work cut through the mix, sharp and urgent. The vocals were desperate, pleading, real. Hang On Sloopy reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in September 1965, replacing Barry McGuire's Eve of Destruction around the time Derringer turned 18. Critics called them garage rock amateurs. Fans called them the future. September 1965, radio stations across America. A teenage guitarist from Ohio dominated the airwaves. The McCoys opened for the Rolling Stones on their first major North American tour. Mick Jagger, watched from the wings. As this kid from Indiana tore through guitar solos, it was shocking. It was brilliant. It worked. The McCoys had 7 songs chart in the top 100, including covers of Fever and Come On, Let's Go. But they never matched Hang On Sloopy. The follow-up hits were smaller. The audience is less enthusiastic, the pressure mounting. The song became the official rock song of Ohio in 1985 and has been a staple of Ohio State football games for decades. The legacy lived on, but the band couldn't sustain it. By the late 1960s, the McCoys were done. Rick Derringer, still barely in his 20s, was looking for the next chapter. The McCoys joined Johnny Winter in a group called Johnny Winter, and referring to the McCoys, Johnny Winter, the albino blues guitarist from Texas, was building a reputation as one of the most ferocious guitar players in America. Rick wasn't the star anymore. He was the sideman, the producer, the guy making other people sound great. But beneath this transition, something dark was growing. Derringer realized he'd signed away his youth. The money from Hang On Sloopy went to labels, managers, producers. He was famous but broke. He was talented but trapped, and the machine kept rolling faster than any of them could control. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. They only come out at night. This was it. The Apex. The album was recorded in 1972 by the Edgar Winter Group, featuring Edgar Winter, Dan Hartman, Ronnie Montrose, and producer Rick Derringer. The album reached #3 on the U.S. Billboard 200 chart and stayed on the charts for 80 weeks. It was certified gold in April 1973 and double platinum in November 1986. Frankenstein topped the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 chart for 1 week in May 1973. It sold over 1 million copies and was certified gold on June 19, 1973. It hit #1 in Canada, #18 in the UK, #10 in Mexico. No blues rock producer had ever done that. Derringer matched the production success of George Martin with the Beatles. He matched Phil Spector's commercial dominance. He matched Quincy Jones's hit-making ability. He was untouchable. The song's title came from drummer Chuck Ruff, who heard a rough mix and said, "Wow, man, it's like Frankenstein." Because of the massive editing required, the final track was spliced together from many sections of the original recording, with audio tape lying all over the control room, draped over chairs and overflowing the console. Derringer made it work. He turned a jam session into a #1 hit. But what fans didn't see was the compromise building beneath the success. Derringer released his first solo album, All American Boy, in 1973, which featured his hit song Rock and Roll, Hoochie Coo. The song had already appeared on Johnny Winter albums, but Derringer's version was definitive. The song reached the top 25 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, becoming his highest charting single. The album All American Boy peaked at #25 on the Billboard 200. Not bad, but not what he expected. Despite the single's success, the album was not commercially successful. One critic called it a sadly neglected album of great merit. Derringer was producing hits for other people. His own solo career was struggling, and that's where the trouble began. In 1974, Derringer replaced Ronnie Montrose in the Edgar Winter Group and remained the band's guitarist and producer for the next 3 years. He released Spring Fever in 1975. It peaked at #141 on the Billboard 100, just 1 for 1. Critics savaged it. Fans felt confused. This wasn't the guitar hero who produced Frankenstein. This was softer, safer, Far from the blues rock intensity he'd helped create in 1976. Rick formed the band Derringer and released 4 albums. They toured heavily throughout the mid and late 1970s. But the moment had passed. Punk was rising. Disco was dominating. Blues rock felt old-fashioned, but the pressure kept building. The band's final major incarnation featured Neil Giraldo, who immediately afterwards scored major success as Pat Benatar's co-writer and guitarist and husband to this day, Derringer. Without the McCoys had worked because he'd found a new identity as a producer. Derringer without Edgar Winter just felt hollow. The tide was beginning to turn. The 1980s, the end was coming. Derringer was 33 years old. A has been in an industry that worshipped youth. He'd had a #1 hit at 17. He produced Frankenstein at 25. By the time he was in his 30s, the phone had stopped ringing. He did session work. He played guitar on Steely Dan's Gaucho in 1980. He played on Donald Fagen's The Nightfly in 1982. He toured. He survived. But he wasn't creating anymore. He was executing in 1983. Derringer returned to his solo career with the album Good Dirty Fun. It barely registered. No hit singles. No chart positions worth mentioning. The album existed and disappeared. Most artists would have quit, but Derringer couldn't let go. Music was his identity. So he did what he'd always done. He adapted. Throughout the 1980s, Derringer worked as a session musician. He played on albums by Alice Cooper, Todd Rundgren, Kiss, and Barbra Streisand. He played on Air Supply's Making Love Out of Nothing at All. He toured with Cyndi Lauper, playing on 3 of her albums, including the hit True Colors. He was everywhere and nowhere, a hired gun, a journeyman. The teenage prodigy was now the reliable sideman who showed up on time and played what he was told. In the mid-1980s, Derringer found an unlikely resurgence. He produced Weird Al Yankovic's debut album, Weird Al Yankovic, in 1983. Between 1983 and 1989, he produced 6 Yankovic albums, for which he received his only Grammy Award. He produced the Grammy-winning songs Eat It in 1984 and Fat in 1988. Yankovic later said, "Rick produced my first 6 albums and played guitar on my earliest recordings, including the solo on Eat It. He had an enormous impact on my life and will be missed greatly. It was work. It was successful. It was nothing like the blues rock glory of Hang on Sloopy or Rock and Roll." Hoochie Coo. In 1985, he co-wrote Real American, the theme song for WWE star Hulk Hogan. The song became a pop culture anthem used by Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump in various campaigns. It gave Derringer another revenue stream, another piece of cultural relevance. But it wasn't what he wanted. It wasn't who he was. The lowest moment came in the 1990s. Derringer's career slowed. He became a born-again Christian near the end of the decade. In 2001, Derringer, his wife Jenda, and their children released the first 2 for Christian music albums, Aiming for Heaven, Derringer X2, Winter Wonderland, and We Live. The blues rock rebel was now singing gospel music with his family. Fans felt betrayed. This wasn't Rick Derringer. This was someone wearing his name, playing music that sounded nothing like the raw energy that made him famous. In 2013, Derringer and Jenda created the Asia Project. They discovered that the 2 largest selling songs in history were Chinese. As Ricky Wu and Jenda 2, they recorded and released their versions of Wang Qiwan and Yang Chengang's Mouse Loves Rice, and actress Liu Shixi's Season of Waiting. The guitarist, who'd opened for the Rolling Stones, was now recording Chinese pop covers, chasing markets where his name still meant something. In 2017, Derringer was charged with carrying a loaded gun on a Delta Airlines flight from Cancun, Mexico to Atlanta, Georgia. According to his manager, Derringer believed he was permitted to carry the gun due to his possession of a valid Florida concealed weapon permit. Derringer later pleaded guilty, agreeing to pay a $1.00 fine. The headlines were humiliating. Rock legend arrested with gun at airport. The teenage guitar hero was now a 70-year-old man making mistakes that made national news. By the 2010s, Rick Derringer quietly faded. No official retirement, no farewell tour, just silence. The guitarist that had produced #1 hits, that had influenced Eddie Van Halen, that had played on albums by Steely Dan and Kiss, couldn't fill theaters anymore. Where he went next tells you everything about what Rick Derringer had become. Derringer toured with Ringo Starr and his all-star band from 2010 to 2011. They traveled across Europe, Russia, South America, Mexico, and the USA. The tour featured Wally Palmer, Edgar Winter, Gary Wright, Richard Page, and Greg Bissonette. Derringer played with Paul McCartney in a performance at New York's Radio City. To celebrate Starr's 70th birthday, Ringo Starr later said, "God bless Rick Derringer. It was great playing with him in the All-Stars. I send peace and love to his family." In 2014, Derringer performed on Peter Frampton's Guitar Circus tour with other notable guitarists, including B.B. King, Roger McGuinn, Don Felder, Leslie West, Rick Nielsen, Steve Lukather, David Hidalgo, and Mike McCready. He was still working, still performing, still trying to reclaim some piece of the magic, but the audiences were aging, the venues were shrinking, the phone calls were fewer. In 2017, Derringer re-recorded Hulk Hogan's theme Real American with updated lyrics. The re-recorded version was released on May 28, 2017. To debut and promote the re-recording, Derringer appeared on InfoWars, the controversial platform run by Alex Jones. The optics were terrible. The teenage guitar hero was now associated with conspiracy theories and political fringe movements. In 2024, Derringer told Guitar Player, "People would like me to continue playing the music that I played when I was a teenager or when I was in my 20s. But his most recent album, released in 2023, was poppy and ballad heavy, far from the blues rock that made him famous. He released blues albums, Back to the Blues in 1993, Electro Blues, Blues Deluxe, Jackhammer Blues in 2000, Knighted by the Blues in 2009, The Three Kings of the Blues. Blues purists loved them. Nobody else heard them. He stayed true to the blues rock music the industry had abandoned. But he remained bitter, not publicly, but privately, bitter that Eddie Van Halen got the glory, bitter that his teenage hit defined him forever, bitter that Rick Derringer had become a nostalgia act. In the final years, health problems mounted. Derringer had undergone ankle bypass surgery, which creates a new pathway for blood to get around a blocked artery. In March 2025, he had a triple bypass surgery, according to his caretaker Tony Wilson. Derringer had been doing well after the surgery. On Memorial Day, May 26, 2025, at 8:09 p.m., while getting ready for bed and reaching for his favorite pillow, Derringer went into shock. He was taken to the hospital in Ormond Beach, Florida, where he was placed on life support. His wife Jenda and his caretaker Tony Wilson were by his side when he was taken off life support. Monday night following a medical episode, he died peacefully. He was 77 years old. Jenda Derringer told TMZ, "We thought we had years left, but God's timing is perfect." He was so positive and peaceful. The man who hit #1 at 17, who produced Frankenstein, who played guitar for Steely Dan, Barbra Streisand, and Kiss, died reaching for a pillow. He died without ever receiving the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction many believed he deserved. If you're enjoying this, remember to subscribe for more. The real story wasn't just about what happened. It was about legacy. Decades later, the question became, what did Rick Derringer mean? Was he the teenage garage rock hero behind Hang On Sloopy? Was he the blues rock guitarist and producer who created rock and roll, Hoochie Coo, and produced Frankenstein? Was he the session musician who appeared on albums by Steely Dan, Kiss, and Cyndi Lauper? Was he the producer who won a Grammy for Weird Al Yankovic's albums? Or was he all of them and none of them at the same time? Today, Rick Derringer exists only as a catalog. Hang On Sloopy is played at Ohio State football games, rock and roll. Hoochie Coo is featured in movies like Dazed and Confused and TV shows like Stranger Things. Real American is still Hulk Hogan's theme music. The music survived, the man didn't. Rick Derringer proved that you can hit #1 at 17, produce a #1 hit at 25, win a Grammy Award, play on albums by the biggest artists in the world, and still fade into obscurity. He became famous by being young at first, then spent the rest of his life trying to recapture what being 17 felt like, and when the hits stopped coming, all that was left was session work, Christian music albums, Chinese pop covers, and the slow realization that early success had been both a blessing and a curse. The #1 hit hid the terrible contracts. The production success hid the lack of solo career momentum. The industry worshipped youth, and when Derringer aged, The industry moved on. And now, decades later, the only thing anyone can agree on is that Rick Derringer deserved better. There are no reunions left, no reconciliations coming. Just one brilliant musician who created something extraordinary at 17 and spent the rest of his life watching it define him, confine him, and ultimately outlive him. Rick Derringer is gone. Jenna Derringer mourns. Tony Wilson, his caretaker, mourns. Edgar Winter mourns. Weird Al Yankovic mourns. Ringo Starr sends peace and love. The music survived. The legend didn't. What part of this story hits you the hardest? The fact that he hit #1 at 17 and never escaped it. The fact that he produced Frankenstein, but his own solo career struggled. The Christian music pivot. The Chinese pop covers. The gun charge at the airport. Did you see him live? The McCoy's era. The Edgar Winter years. The Ringo Starr tours. Or the Peter Frampton guitar circus? Was Rick Derringer criminally underrated? Or did early success doom him to a life of diminishing returns? Drop your memories and opinions below. And if this story fascinated you, hit like and subscribe because the rise and fall of legends never gets old. Thanks for watching.